Hey guys, it's Kwana back again with another review. Hope you guys are doing awesome. I am so sorry that I did not get out my Handmaid's Tale episode 8 for season 4 video testimony. I watched testimony like 2-3 times, but just because of how my week went, I was not able to sit down and record. And then what kind of happens is once I miss that kind of like 2-3 day window right after where I just know it's not going to get the reviews, I started kind of depressed about it, and I just had to just say, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it if I get back to it, because I did have lots of thoughts about the episode and about Luke and him showing up. So spoilers for episode 8, him showing up at the trial against June's wishes, about the strain between Moira and June, between June's actions or reactions to things. I had lots of thoughts about the episode, but ultimately we must press forward. And so here we are with episode 9. So hope you guys are ready to hear all of my thoughts and my theories prior to going into the season finale next week. Hopefully you guys are ready for my all spoilery reaction review for The Handmaid's Tale season 4 episode 9 entitled Progress. Before we get started, do me a favor and click the like button down below so that this video can gain some traction, and don't forget, if you're not subscribed, to subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate it. Thank you. So we're going to start with the Gilead story. So we're caught back up with Janine, who, if we remember from last week's episode, she's taken back to the Red Center and she is reunited with Aunt Lydia. We again see that Aunt Lydia has a significant soft spot for Janine. She genuinely seems to care for Janine, despite the fact that Aunt Lydia is a severely messed up individual and cannot separate her desire to help the women who are handmaids with her religious zealousness, in a way where she's both willing to punish, discipline, and hurt and harm them if it is to get them to do what she feels is within their best interest. And that is a significantly messed up personality. I liken her to an abusive parent who might in some ways care for their child, but is also significantly abusive. And that's kind of how Aunt Lydia is. When we catch up with this week's episode, Janine is becoming the perfect handmaid in the sense that she wants to prove that she can be valuable by remaining in the Red Center. She knows that she will not survive having to go through the process of being a handmaid, a true handmaid again. She will not survive going through the process of being made to be raped and then birth a child that is not going to be her child, that will be taken from her. So she's kind of clicked in on the idea of wanting to stay there, and so she's trying to make herself useful so that she doesn't experience any pain. And so far it seems to be working in her favor. Bring in Mrs. Keys. You remember she's the young commander's wife who helped the handmaids who had escaped in episodes 1 and 2, but unfortunately was captured and now has been made a handmaid. Well, we found out Mrs. Key's name is Esther. Obviously, she's not been given an of name yet. And she is June 2.0. Defiant, resilient, hardened. And that worked in June's favor. It won't necessarily work in hers. And so Janine recognizes that strength in her. And because Janine herself has become kind of a protege of June, she recognizes how to play the game, and she's learned how to do that, and so she wants to help. So she eventually goes to Aunt Lydia and says, like, let me help her, let me tell her what she's in danger of, because she just doesn't know. She's just ignorant, and maybe if she knows what could happen, then she'll get it together. The aunts are at dinner with that dry chicken, talking about cutting that girl's tongue out, doing all kinds of things to maim her in a way where she can still have babies, but will learn her lesson. And so Janine is like, let me see if I can convince her. She eventually goes to Esther and gives her, the same spiel of letting her know, like, things could get a lot worse for you. Like, you think this is bad. You think what you've gone through has been bad, and it has been, but things could get worse. And at first it doesn't seem like she's listening, but eventually she does. There's a moment in that conversation where I just start to get frustrated with TV shows and movies that do this, where you have one character giving advice to another character, but they don't just come out and say it. And I really just wanted Janine to say, like, pull away her eye patch and show her missing eye and say, this is what they did to me. You think that's bad? I've met women who have had hands and limbs cut off, who've had their genitalia mutilated. Like, just go out and just say it. Like, remind us of everything that we have seen on this journey as well. But they didn't do it. But I mean, it worked out. You know, Esther eventually kind of gets it together. And that scene where they're walking down the hallway together, such a power move. We're definitely supposed to get the sense that not only is there a closeness between them, but this is a power move. Like, Janine is building a new soldier that's going to help her. Likewise, I think they're kind of hinting at the idea of Aunt Lydia building an army. And I won't go too much into my theories on that because I don't know if that's going to come to fruition, but I get the sense that, you know, we see Aunt Lydia being way more aggressive toward the other aunts than she is to these women. And I definitely think that if Janine can get into Aunt Lydia's head and say, maybe there's a way, at least for now, that your beliefs can work, you know, the things that you think are good about this, we can kind of work them in such a way that the handmaids are not mistreated. I think if she can get Aunt Lydia to go along with that, we'll see Aunt Lydia start to kind of harness that and eventually maybe even see a complete turn, because she's starting to get there. She's just not there all the way. But I love that moment. I definitely see, like, it's like a callback to Janine and June together. It's also a callback to that scene where right after the other handmaids, I think it was right after the other handmaids were killed by the train, that there was like a flash of like them the voiceover of June talking about them walking in pairs. And then we see her and Janine together. It's kind of like this is her new partner, her walking partner. And they're going to protect each other. And I love that for them. All right, so let's move over to the Waterfords. I hardly ever want to talk about the Waterfords because right now, like, they are just complete trash. And Yvonne does such a good job of playing Serena Joy that sometimes, because she is so beautiful, it's like, dang girl, I want to like you sometimes. Sometimes you give me just enough to where it's like you are awake to the ish that's going on. But then I remember that she's a completely trash person who allowed her husband to full on rape June. And I'm not just talking about the ceremony. I'm talking about holding her down, raping her so she could go into labor. That I just completely am like, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, I'm done with you. I want no parts of this. The fact that they're getting presents from Canadians who are supporting them, and she's just like, this is not the baby shower that I envisioned. Like, it's really like, girl, bye. Like, seriously, like, get over yourself. Fred is saying to her, you know, just be grateful for what we have. And then it's in that moment that they get the little suit that's like someone gives them as like for the future commander, that she realizes that in the event that they are free, they will be going back to Gilead. And that's not necessarily the life that she's on board with. At this point, we definitely get the sense that Serena doesn't genuinely believe in Gilead. The parts that she believes are the parts that she tells herself in order to reconcile all of the horrible things that she's done as a human being. However, she knows what life is going to be like for her in Gilead. She knows that she's going to be susceptible to like all kinds of torture and abuse and punishment for what she's done. And that in the raising of their boys, they genuinely will be raising these boys to hate women, perpetuating the cycle of hating women. I can talk about that from the perspective of a boy mom, that for me, being a very aware woman, I definitely want my sons to grow up loving women, appreciating women, valuing women, respecting women, protecting women. And it's always a fear that society will kind of overpower the things that I put into them. she is in that same boat. Like, you can just see it in everything every time it's brought up. So eventually they're visited by the Putnams, which is like, hold up, did I miss something? Let me know down below. Did I miss something? Like, how are the Putnams just coming by for a visit? Oh, we just came over for some tea and crumpets. Like, wait, like, no, are the lines between Gilead and Canada that fluid now? Because I'm definitely sure that, like, the UN is trying to bring against Gilead a case, right? So I'm just like, I don't understand. But anyway, Naomi's naive self is talking to Serena about, well, we can watch your child for you. And, when you come back, and she's like, if I come back, they're going to send me to the colonies, or they're going to turn me into a handmaid. And you start to see all of this beginning to set in. Now with Fred, it hasn't until he talks to Yvonne, who, if you recall, is missing a whole hand because of his relationship with Janine, by the way. And he's like, how are they making any trade deals on my behalf? Like, what's been the word? And he's like, dude, we don't have time to worry about you. We're trying to over here get these 86 kids back. That's what we've been worried about. And Fred is really upset because he really felt like he was a big dog. Like, they would really be fighting for him. Like, there's a whole network. We've only seen small pockets of districts in Gilead. Mostly we've been seeing the Boston, we did go and visit, Commander Stabler over in Washington, D.C. But aside from that, the land of Gilead extends extensively across the United States and pretty much all the way out towards the west. It's Gilead. So I don't know what Fred was thinking, naive, but he definitely has the awakening that, like, Gilead is not here for him. Likewise, Serena has that epiphany that, like, he would end up raising their son, being remarried to somebody else, and she's going to end up as a handmaid on a wall somewhere. So it's not surprising that as she's calling out Fred for his lack of power, and that is a whole thing that kind of is really going on with the Canadian people, the people who are in Canada right now. It's just who has power and who doesn't. Fred and Serena don't have power. The only power Serena has is that she's with child now. They don't have power, and she is quick to always call Fred out with his not having power. And I definitely think that like causes him to make the decision to do what he does, which is ultimately to agree to sell Gilead trade secrets. Now, what end, I think we'll find out next episode, because if he does that, he can't go back to Gilead. If he does that, he can really only stay in Canada, because I'm pretty sure Gilead's going to realize that he probably sold some trade secrets in order to get out. Like, they didn't just let him go. So what is the end game? What is the end goal with them? There's a moment where Serena's talking, and I had a thought that I could see, if things do go south, if the plan is to send her back to Gilead, or send them back to Gilead, she's not going to want her child to be in Gilead. And I would not be surprised if we see a couple of scenarios play out, one of which is her going back to Rita and asking Rita to raise her child, her potentially asking June, or we'll see her actively trying to get her child networked out of Gilead in the next season. But I think there's some interesting plot points just to see how that works out. Can Fred and Serena be redeemed? I think there is more of a case for Serena to receive redemption. But again, I go back to the pregnancy rape scene, and it's like, that is like the moment where I'm like, nah, son, I don't see it. I don't see full redemption arc for them. Certainly not with her being reunited with Fred. I don't see it. All right, so then finally we get to the main storyline, which is Luke and June and Luke. I loved the intro, the close-up, Elizabeth Moss. For all y'all haters out there who don't think that she's, the best or whatever, Elizabeth Moss is bomb. She's a great actress, especially when it comes to like in her eyes. You can usually, even if the rest of her face is kind of stoic, which she does a lot with June because it's trying to show us her holding in June's emotions, but you can usually see in the eyes, and you can see the disappointment and just the shame that she feels when she's telling Luke about Hannah. Likewise, they do the close-up of Luke's eyes. And OT is great in this because you can see the acceptance and the love he feels for June in that moment, and I really liked it. This whole thing with June and Moira, they need to have kind of like a coming together or something. We need to see them mending their relationship because I'm just not here for this. It is making me emotional. I love Samira Wiley. She is such a beautiful woman, and I'm not here for this tension between them. But when she walks in and June says, I told Luke everything, and they're looking at all of the things that Luke has collected, and June is like, wow, you did all of this. She says, wow, and I'm going to take her at her word, but at the same time, when Moira comes in and acknowledges what June was able to accomplish, actually getting 86 kids out of Gilead, there's definitely a power imbalance. June has been more powerful than Luke has. In his freedom, she's been more powerful without freedom. And Moira kind of acknowledges that when she says, you have power. You have power now. It's a good time to use it. Like acknowledging how powerful June is. And so they go to Tuello and they call Lawrence. Lawrence is another one who I'm like, is there a redemption arc? I think there's more of a redemption arc for Lawrence because it's kind of like how, I don't know, I have a hard problem with Lawrence because I don't even see how Lawrence remotely bought into Gilead. Like, was he just paid to do this or what? Because he just doesn't seem like his personality would even remotely let him believe in this. He doesn't seem overtly religious at all. So like, was he like just like a right winger who was just in it because it was adjacent to power and he believed in like a small government or what? I'm not understanding. Nothing about him screams to me that he really genuinely believes in the religiosity of Gilead. So I don't know. But the banter between him and June, I'm always here for that. But he just doesn't get it. He doesn't get why June is so fixated on finding her child. He's not understanding that not only is her child going to be raised in Gilead under that wave of thinking, being brainwashed and potentially being turned into just a baby making machine with no possibility for a bigger, better future, why she would want that. And then he tells her basically, you're a fountain of like pain. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's so horrible. Ultimately, he tries to make a trade for about 10 kids. And again, this is where I'm back on this, like, what is he doing? What is his end game? Is he just, and I think he wants to stay in it. He just wants to improve it. It is like people who think that you can fix the systems that we're currently in. And it's like, can those systems really be fixed, or do they need to be completely dismantled and built back up from the ground, from the bottom up to the top? He basically says, you need to move on if you can, but nothing comes from that. And so here's the moment in the show where I screamed at the television screen, because eventually Luke goes to June and is like, she's like, I'm sorry that didn't work out. He's like, okay, it's okay. We have another player. And she's like, really, who? He's like, Nick. And then he basically, for lack of a better word, goes to her and says, why don't you try to meet with Nick and don't get the Canadians involved on the phone, but meet with him face to face. And he's like imploring her to do this. And she's like, why would you want me to go see Nick? And then he's like, well, he's a commander now. We should use that while he still has power. And then she's like, you want me to see Nick? And he's like, no, I don't want you to see Nick. But you've said he has, feelings for you and he cares about you, so we should leverage that. Oh, and you should also take Nicole, by the way, because he won't be able to, deny his daughter, right? Yeah, I'm sorry for those of you who don't like me saying that Luke pimped out June. He is leveraging the relationship that she has with Nick to get his child back without regard to how that is going to impact June. Because he's like, at the end of the day, I want my child back. His child is here safe. And I'm not saying he doesn't care about June. I'm not saying he doesn't care about Nicole, but that's literally, that was a cringy, even the setup of that scene where he's nervously asking for this. It's like he knows what he's asking for is not good, that he shouldn't be asking that of her. But he does. And so off June goes to meet with Nick, and they meet at some like old Catholic schoolhouse that's probably like on the border, right on the edge of, you know, like Illinois or Minnesota, and I don't know geography, probably Illinois, I don't know, and in Canada. But I was just not feeling how that setup went, because I think it adds and creates a lot of bad things for June and Luke, especially because it's like in these instances he's not acknowledging how June really feels. And then we get Nick and June have their cutesy little reunion or whatever. And it's like, yes, he was young when he was indoctrinated into the Sons of Jacob, but we don't have any real knowledge other than him trying to save June of him being really highly involved in any plans to help aid other people. Like, we hear bits and pieces here and there, but it's not anything significant where we should really believe that he has had a full redemption arc. So for all of the people who are like fawning over Nick, I'm still not getting it, especially now that we know how much more involved he actually was and how powerful he's become, despite being connected to the Waterfords, despite being connected to a wife who abandoned him and fell in love with the guardian. Like, it's just a lot of things that just are very sus about Nick. But he gives the little baby Nicole this little pink baby doll that looks like one of them little Gilead girls, and they have their little moment. And he gives June a folder with a bunch of pictures of Hannah, tells her that Hannah's in Colorado Springs being heavily guarded. There's no way he can get to her. And we basically lets her know that like there's no hope to get Hannah out. They don't even have those connections to be able to, like, she's way deep. I mean, you're in Colorado Springs, you're way deep in it. So that's kind of a little bit of a hopeless situation, but they have their moment, they hug and kiss and whatever. And then at the end of it, y'all, he slips on that wedding ring. Now, people are speculating that he's married to Hannah. No, I do not think that he is married to Hannah, okay? I'm not going to say that he couldn't get married to Hannah, but I don't think that he's married to Hannah. Hannah is not quite old enough, even if she had had her period at 12. I don't think they would be marrying her off quite that young. I think Mrs. Keys is probably like the point where it's like that they're comfortable with. She's 15, 16 years old. Marry her off at that point. 12, I don't see that happening. But he slips on his wedding ring, and I really felt like that was a moment of closure. Like, he's completely okay with Nicole being in Canada. That's where he wants her to be. I also don't feel like he's like greatly attached to Nicole. I feel like he's able to disassociate from that very much. Like, we didn't see him engaging with Nicole a whole lot. And I think that that's perhaps a protection mechanism, but he doesn't see that as like, I think he's fixated on how he feels about June, not necessarily so much about Nicole, but more about June. Anyway, June eventually goes back, tells them, what happened. And Tuello says, well, it's okay because we got Fred, and Fred is going to turn and give us trade secrets in order to get completely free, completely 100% free. Now, he does not say Serena, so I'm interested to find out if Serena is a part of that deal or if the deal only extends to Fred. But June went off and was like, I'm going to kill you. So that makes me really wonder, like, what is she going to do? I do not see a world in which by season 5, June is not back in Gilead. I don't see how we get that story to continue with June just kind of being in Canada, unless at the end of this season, It's basically like they're in Canada. There's no hope for retrieving Nicole. And then we get a significant time jump between season 4 and season 5. And basically what we get is a shift in focus for Gilead to Aunt Lydia, Janine, and Mrs. Keyes, more focused in on them in terms of the Gilead side. And we don't really get as much of June and Moira and Luke. Other than that, right now, I can't see it. I don't think I'll be able to have a vision for what next season will look like until we get to the finale. But this episode was a complete trip, like finding out Nick was married, finding out that Hannah is in Colorado and they can't get to her, Mrs. Keyes being made a handmaid, like the whole Luke stuff was a lot to deal with in this episode. And so I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm just like waiting with bated breath for Wednesday. I will be posting the season finale, my reactions to that. And the great thing is that all of the big reviewers, to my knowledge, they did not get screeners for that. So we're all kind of having the same baseline of not knowing what's going on. I also plan to be live tweeting. So if you do not follow me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter at @reel_her. It's at REEL_HER. It's also in the description below. I will be live tweeting, and then I will be posting my immediate thoughts and reactions to the season finale of The Handmaid's Tale. So guys, that is all for me today. Do me a favor, if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button. If you're not already subscribed, don't forget to hit those bell notifications if you are, and please hit the like so that we can get this out to more people. And until next week, toodles.